The cold night air hit my face as the door slammed behind me. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. My suitcase thudded against the tiled floor, clothes spilling out. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even zip it back up. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. That's what made it worse. Daniel just looked at me, eyes empty, jaw trembling slightly, and said, "You should go, Maya." That was it. No screaming, no questions. Just those 4 words. And I left. But by the next morning, I'd told everyone who would listen that he was heartless, cruel, that he'd kicked me out over a misunderstanding. I painted myself as the wounded one because admitting the truth, the real reason, would have broken me in a way I wasn't ready to face. 2 weeks earlier, everything had still felt right. Daniel and I had been together for nearly 4 years. We'd built a quiet little life together. Late-night ramen on the couch, weekend hikes, plans for a dog we hadn't named yet. He was calm where I was chaos, thoughtful where I was impulsive. But then Liam came back. My ex. The man I'd spent 3 years trying to forget. He messaged me out of nowhere. "Heard you're doing well. I'm in town for a week. Coffee?" I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before replying. I told myself it was harmless. Closure, maybe. Daniel didn't question it when I mentioned it casually over dinner. He just nodded. "If it'll help you put that chapter to rest, sure." He trusted me. God, that still stings. The coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into drinks. And drinks turned into his hotel room. It felt like stepping into a fire I thought I'd long since put out. Every touch was both familiar and wrong. And even as guilt burned through me, I convinced myself it was just a one-time mistake. A moment of weakness. When I got home that night, Daniel was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing softly. He'd waited up for me. There was an untouched plate of pasta on the table, wrapped in foil. My chest tightened, but I told myself I could carry the secret. Except secrets have a smell. 3 days later, Daniel was quieter. He'd still kiss me good morning, still make coffee for 2, but his eyes had a question behind them. I noticed him watching me, not accusingly, but like someone trying to solve a puzzle they didn't want the answer to. One night, while I was folding laundry, he said softly, "You've been distant." I laughed it off. "Work's been stressful." He nodded, but his fingers trembled slightly as he picked up one of my shirts. Then, a few nights later, I saw the look. That look people give when something inside them finally breaks. It happened on a Sunday. Rain hammered against the windows, gray light spilling through the curtains. I was in the kitchen when he walked in, holding my phone. His voice was quiet. "Who's Liam?" My stomach dropped. "Why are you going through my phone?" "Because you've been somewhere else for days." His voice cracked on the last word. I snatched the phone from his hand, heart racing. "You're overreacting. He's just a friend." He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just turned the screen toward me. Photo. My back against a hotel wall. Liam's hand in my hair. My eyes closed. For a moment the world stopped spinning. The only thing I heard was the soft, broken sound that escaped Daniel's throat. Half laugh, half sob. He didn't ask how it happened. He didn't want details. He just stepped aside and said, "You should go." I wanted him to yell, to fight for me, to make me feel worth forgiving. But he didn't. And that silence, that unbearable calm silence, was worse than any shouting could have been. So I built a new story. I told my friends Daniel had become controlling, that he'd thrown me out over nothing. I needed someone to blame, and he was too decent to defend himself. For weeks people comforted me, told me I'd dodged a bullet, that I deserved better. But at night when I tried to sleep, all I could see was the look on his face as he closed the door. A month later I saw him again. It was at a friend's engagement party. He was standing across the room, smiling politely as someone talked to him. He looked thinner, tired. But when his eyes met mine I froze. He didn't look angry, just sad. I tried to avoid him, but later that night, I found him on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Daniel," I said quietly. He turned, nodding once. Maya. I waited for him to say something more, but he didn't. He just looked at me with that same unbearable calm. I'm sorry, I whispered. He didn't ask why. Didn't ask how. I know, he said. But sorry doesn't change what's true. His voice was steady, but I saw his hands tighten on the railing. I stepped closer. I didn't mean to hurt you. He gave a faint, bitter smile. You didn't mean not to either. That cut deeper than anything else he could have said. After that night I tried to move on. I dated other people. I told myself time would dull the ache. But every time I heard someone call Daniel's name across a cafe or saw a man with his same dark blue jacket, my heart twisted. I realized I'd built my version of the story to survive the guilt, to make my reflection bearable. But the truth kept finding cracks to seep through. The real cruelty hadn't come from Daniel. It had come from me. 6 months later I ran into Liam again. He was sitting outside a bar laughing with friends. When he saw me he waved. For a second I almost smiled back. Then I saw the way he looked at me. Casual, detached, like what happened between us had been nothing more than a passing thrill. I turned away before he could speak. That night, I found Daniel's old sweater still folded in the back of my closet. I sat on the floor, holding it, breathing in the faint trace of his cologne. And for the first time I let myself say it out loud. He wasn't cruel. My voice shook. He was kind. And I destroyed him. A year later, Daniel got engaged. I saw the photos online. Him and a woman I didn't recognize, standing by a lake, smiling like he'd finally found peace. I stared at the image for a long time. Then I clicked like, even though my throat burned. Not because I was over him, but because I finally understood that love isn't proven by possession. Sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to someone is force them to keep loving you after you've broken what they trusted most. I used to think he'd closed that door on me because he stopped loving me. Now I know he did it because he loved himself enough not to stay. And that's the truth I never told anyone. Not the friends who called him heartless. Not the ones who comforted me while I cried about being abandoned. I told everyone my boyfriend was cruel because he kicked me out after I slept with my ex. But the truth is, he was the only one who ever loved me enough to let me face what I'd become. And I'll spend the rest of my life wishing he hadn't been right.